Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Horse Business People Problems and the Policies that Prevent Them. I'm Elizabeth McMillan, the editor at EquestrianProfessional.com. And before we get started, I want to thank all of you for attending, and I also want to give a shout-out to the folks over at Equimax and Horse Jobs Canada for helping us get the word out about this webinar. And if any of you are ever looking for a job in the horse industry or you're looking for good help, I highly recommend both Seth over at Equimax.com or Sarah at Horse Jobs Canada. So they helped us send out a few emails about this webinar, and some of you may have been on this call because of them. So thank you so much. So for tonight's presentation, we have with us Tanya Johnston, MA. She is a mental skills coach with a master's degree in sports psychology. And Tanya specializes in working with equestrian athletes as well as being a horse show competitor herself. She's been a recent speaker at both the United States Eventing Association and the United States Dressage Federation national conventions, and she conducts United States Hunter Jumper Association affiliated mental skills for riders clinics throughout the country, as well as in-person and phone consultations with individual clients. And Tanya has been a speaker at several of our webinars. And one of the things that we noticed was that she really had a knack for helping horse professionals work through client communication issues in a really positive way, which is why we've asked her to speak tonight. So welcome, Tanya, and let's get started.
Great. Thanks so much. And so I'm excited to be with all of you today. I think that when Elizabeth and I have talked about this, we've been always so many ideas have come up for us and all the dealings that we've had with horse professionals over the years. So much of your business relies on you being a skilled communicator and leader and really manager of a large group of people. And so what we talked about were ways to break that down and go over some things, maybe fine-tune or polish some of your skills in this area, and then also for sure talking about some specific case examples of, problems that crop up, ways to handle them, and certainly I hope to, in the next 20 minutes, talk about some things that can, what I call head things off at the pass, so prevent them from happening in the first place. So it's going to be a little bit twofold. It's a little bit going to be about ways you can avoid having conflict or challenges or problems that come up, but then also once they have cropped up, how can you more effectively handle them? So at least in my portion, I'm hoping to talk a little bit about both of those things. And in thinking about it, really wanted to highlight communication skills and leadership skills, and looking at that those two things are really where your relationship with clients and the ways that you communicate your ideas and goals and, the program that you offer is so important and is only understood based on how you communicate with the world through marketing, how you talk about it, how you frame it when new people come through the door, and then once people are there, how do you lead them and how do you get everyone working towards the same goals and feeling really productive and positive about what they're doing there with you in your business. So tackling first the communication skills, everyone has communication skills. Now, a lot of times, when I work with professionals and trainers and have trainers as clients and what have you, a lot of times people will say, I'm a horse person. I'm not necessarily a people person. And so we work on, ways that you can communicate more effectively. And that's totally understood. And obviously everyone has a different skill set and everyone's more comfortable or less comfortable talking to a new prospective client or marketing themselves or talking about themselves in a positive light. And really what I'm hoping to help you guys do through tonight's talk is really strengthen what you already have and strengthen what you do well. And so communication skills, again, are things often that we don't think about because everyone sort of says, well, yeah, I know how to do that. But I encourage you to think about reflecting on your practices and the way and your style of communicating and reflect on that and see if you can't learn some new things or polish some skills that maybe you haven't thought about in a very clear way in a while. And to my experience, the best professionals and best athletes are people who are always learning, and they're always open for new ideas, and they're always interested in, getting even if it's just a little small gem of knowledge that's new. So in going over these communication skills, we're going to kind of look at it that way. Maybe we'll touch on something that you haven't thought about in a while. Maybe we'll talk about ways of doing things that are a little bit of a shift for you that you see as could be a positive change. So just going through these, how do you effectively communicate? You can think back probably in the last week and think about a conversation you had that was fantastic, where you felt like you really communicated well, you were on the same page as your client, and you might have in the last week be able to think of an example of a conversation you had where the opposite was true, where it didn't seem like you guys were on the same page, and even the more you talked, the worse it got, and it seemed like it got into a bit of a tangled web. And so from the baseline, being direct and straightforward with who you're communicating with is so key, and being able to say what you mean and mean what you say. So using simple language at times, sometimes editing in your own mind and being more concise can be very helpful. And this is really important because the more you know someone, sometimes we start to make assumptions. So it's important to sort of regroup, even with the clients you've had for a very long time, to continue to be so direct and continue to double check and clarify and make things very clean for people so that assumptions and understandings that you might have had 2 years ago, well, now things have changed and, you're in a new facility or they have a new horse or, continuing to be mindful about being direct and very straightforward as you talk to people or with your written policies, handouts, rules, all of those kinds of things is very important. Also using positive language, and this is something that I talk about with riders when we talk about self-talk and making sure you're giving yourself positive messages. Well, the same is true when you're communicating with those around you, making sure that you're suggesting things you would like to have happen, right? Instead of what you are don't want or need to enforce rules around. So when you say something like, I don't want you here after 7 when the barn's closed. Well, how can we frame that? Even that, the person is imagining all the reasons they would need to be at the barn after 7. So saying instead something like, it's really helpful to me when everyone respects, the barn hours and that we're here from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and that's really important for our team to run smoothly. And when that's not respected, things start to get more complicated, and I really want to keep it clear with everyone that those are the rules. And that's just a small example. Also using I statements. When you do have a tricky situation come up or something that is feeling challenging that you need to talk about, it's really helpful for you to use I statements so that you're coming from a place of what you understand and what you feel. So, saying, I'm confused by the fact that we've had 3 lessons in the last 2 weeks that you've missed, and yet we have a show next week. So I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling confused. Let's talk about it so that I can understand better, what's going on with you, as an example, instead of you need to walk the talk, you're not pulling your weight, you can't expect to do well next week if you don't show up. Those are much more volatile in nature, those kinds of statements, and they really don't do what ultimately you're looking to do, which is come together on a difficult issue and look at solving it. So using an I statement is a way of partnering with who you're talking to and saying, look, I'm going to model to you that I'm going to talk about how I'm feeling, I'm going to talk about what I'm experiencing, and I'd really like you to do the same because we need more understanding here. So that's a really good reminder. A lot of times over the years we might forget that one, and that's a good thing to be reminded of. And in looking at communication, listening is as important of a communication skill as how you talk to someone or how you write things down or how you remind people of things in a barn situation. So being able to listen, now first and foremost, of course, that's going to make, what you need to do is be able to speak up when someone tries to have a conversation with you in the middle of a Saturday morning group lesson and they start, divulging all this information, a lot of personal things about what's going on for them and how they need more support or whatever it may be. Of course, it's difficult to be an active listener if the time and timing of the conversation isn't appropriate. So first and foremost, you need to help your clients find good times. And almost like, in college when you had professors who had office hours, you might create some sort of a framework up for, when you need to talk to me. It's great if I hear about it a couple days ahead. Let's find a time. Saturday afternoons are a good time for me. That you might explain that even in your barn policies if people want to get a hold of you, ways to do that so that you can be a good listener. So the tools around and techniques around being a good active listener involve paraphrasing back to the person what you're hearing, asking deepening questions, acknowledging that they have maybe a different point of view or their own unique point of view, demonstrating empathy and understanding for where they're coming from. A lot of times this listening piece, again, with professionals being so pressed for time and pulled in so many different directions, I think that this listening it's better to have 2 minutes of quality than an hour of low quality because you're both going to leave feeling frustrated. You maybe have been interrupted by your cell phone 5 times, people coming up and asking you what bridle to use, all those kinds of things have interrupted you, and then you sort of have communicated, but really nobody's leaving that conversation feeling that good about it. So better to sort of protect the time, be really conscious of your listening skills, and do a shorter amount of time and explain that, be very forthright about why we have 5 minutes and not 25.